the video will get, we're going to start with a video first.
Yeah.
So we'll get the slide now and our presentation. That was our new destination market that is displaying Nunavut, and I'll have my DM explain more on that.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're really pleased to be here to be able to talk about the arts and culture of Nunavut and what the impact is towards our economy. The Destination Nunavut video that you just saw, we just launched that, and what that is that's our Destination Nunavut brand, and so that was just launched a few months ago. And so now for all our tourism-related items, you'll see the little red Inukshuk, like these pins, on our advertising things. We wanted today to give you a sense of what Nunavut is like, and also make it relevant to our discussion on the economy. We're not going to make you sit here for a half an hour and show you pages and pages of statistics, because what we really want to do today is talk about the people that are behind helping our economy. So you don't have to worry, although I am an accountant. Just tell me to stop if I get into those numbers too much. I'm here today with the Honourable Minister Monica Ell-Kanayuk, who's also the Deputy Premier of Nunavut. So that's the branding we just talked about, and it's the spirit of the Arctic. There we go.
You just need to step 1 foot.
So just to give you a bit of background, so our territory is 1/5 of Canada's landmass, but at the same time, our population is only approximately 37,000 people. Our largest community, which is our capital, Iqaluit, has a population of 7,500 people, and our smallest community has about 150 people. 85% of our population is Inuit, and we became a separate territory in 1999. So prior to 1999, we were part of the Northwest Territories. In all of our communities, there are no roads that are linked to other communities. So our only means of transportation is through airplanes. It doesn't like me.
Do you want me to do that?
Maybe. Then back. You want to talk about our way of life?
This slide is just showing our way of life, and as you know, we are a lot of subsistence hunters in Nunavut. As an example, my husband's a full-time hunter while I'm a politician, leaving him, and on top of that, he does house cleaning and all that. So, But we don't really go by dog teams anymore, but there are a lot of people that do have dog teams that take people out more for tourist opportunities and outfitting purposes. We still do a lot of hunting with the animals that are available to us, such as the polar bear that's hanging there, the skin, and very limited with caribou. We have a quota in place at this time because of lack of caribou in the Baffin region, not so much in the Kivalliq. It's open in the other two areas of Nunavut. And of course, carving and sewing. We have a renowned carver amongst us here who's, if you have an opportunity, go out in the, just out past the foyer outside. He's doing a carving there. Very interesting if you're interested in seeing him in action. I think you should do that. And we have a lot of carvers that depend on making their living on a daily basis. We have a lot of home sewers and arts and crafts type people, several full-time doing that, but even more doing it on the side on the weekend to make ends meet. Yeah, and more of our culture. This slide is showing some of the more of our culture and the amauti. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the amauti, which is what you carry your baby in the back, and they come in all kinds of sizes. Inuit games, throat singing, drum dancing, being on the land, hunting, as I said earlier, and we respect our Inuit Kaujumajatokangit, which means what we've known all along, our traditional knowledge. A little bit more on the role of the cultural activities in Nunavut's economic development. Pre-contact with the carving tradition. I have a little bit of history on that. In the early, late 1700s, 1800s, we had the Hudson's Bay Company and the whalers come to our area, and of course with the contact with the people, the Inuit were very adaptable, so the interest was there to do some trading with the furs and also with the artifacts that they already were making in terms of what they needed, such as the little baby dolls and stuff like that they were making for their children. So seeing that, they were starting to sell or trade those things. So then the opportunities started happening with the trade, and Inuit were smart enough to start thinking ahead when the next ship will come to make more things. So that's how carvings and making of things for sale probably started. So these attempts to organize Inuit, we saw the development with the West Baffin Eskimo Cooperative in Cape Dorset as an example, provide access to markets, equipment, training, and really it was the beginning of the Inuit art industry as we know it today. And one of the reasons Inuit art took off the way it did is because Inuit clearly saw it as an important source of income at a time where there were few others available, and Inuit art would not be where it is today, and if it did not find such a receptive southern market.
To give you some history, so the government support goes back to the 1950s. The new territory of Nunavut has recognized the importance of cultural industries. In 2003, the Nunavut Economic Development Strategy recognized the arts as a key sector. And then we went on and had a strategy for growth in Nunavut's Arts and Crafts sector was launched in 2007. So here we get into the numbers. So Nunavut's arts and crafts sector engages 20% of the territory's workforce over the age of 14, meaning a significant portion of the population makes their living or supplemental income through the arts. The territory's arts sector contributes an estimated $30 million to Nunavut's economy annually. Art from Nunavut artists makes up more than 10% of Canadian art sold internationally. So, although that sounds very positive, when we get down to looking at the percentage of artists and what their sales ranges are, you'll see there's very few Nunavut artists who can actually support themselves on the money they make as an artist. So we see that in the sales range of $60,000 to $100,000, with the average being 80, that's only 2% of the artists, or a total number of artists of 60. Then we see the 30 to 60,000, which represents 180 artists, and the average of that is 45,000. 10,000 to 30,000, we see that that's 7.5%, or 225 artists. And then you get into the bigger numbers. So people who make between $5,000 and $10,000, that's where the majority of the artists are. That's 720 artists. And then we see $500 to $5,000, and that makes up 1,815 artists. So you can see what the slide is telling you. We have a lot of people involved in arts and crafts, but very few of them are doing it full time.
Do you think that the group that is at the bottom, do you think that is largely people who are doing it as a part of their work, or do you, like where do you think that the majority of people who are working part or full time in the arts falls in this chart?
They would, the top category for sure, they're working probably full time, right? The rest of them, though, and especially the very bottom number, that's going to be people who are probably most of the time sewing for their families. And then when they're looking to supplement their income, they'll make an extra parka so they can sell that. And probably where we see the number of artists like 720, that's people, or what we believe to be the people that are looking to support themselves for food.
It's funny that the top category and the bottom category are almost the same dollar amount. The top 60 people are making the same as the other 1,800.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really what we've...
More artists in the lower number, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot more. But so what we can see, though, is that although it brings a lot of money into our economy, when you look at it for the person, and that's what we want to talk about today, is the people behind these numbers. None of them are doing well. To live in Nunavut, if your salary was even $30,000 to $60,000, you're barely surviving. Like, you're going to have trouble feeding yourself without some other form of income. So our arts and crafts strategy is now 10 years old, and what we are now looking at is what have we learned? We've learned that, the market is still strong. There's a big demand for Inuit art, but the marketplace is seeking innovative approaches as well as traditional designs. The definition of art needs to be expanded to include other creative forms of expression. So it's not just a carving. It's not just someone who sews and makes a parka. We have visual artists now. Like, things are really changing. And film now is also another industry that's just really getting going. Like, there was the first film at Nord-Norge by Zacharias Kunuk. And then you weren't really hearing a lot of other things about film. But now we're seeing a lot more. This is our branding, and so if you buy a carving from Nunavut, what's going to come with your carving is one of those authentic Nunavut art branding. And so that's how people know that that piece of art is from Nunavut. And we call it an igloo tag because of the design, and it tells you that it's an authentic Nunavut brand. So here's our films, and Angry Inuk is doing just incredible things. And it's going to be playing here tomorrow night. And so that film has just, I mean, it's incredible how far it's gone internationally. You know, for a lot of our films, people see them locally, they see them in Nunavut, sometimes maybe into southern Canada. But Angry Inuk is amazing, and I hope everyone who's still here goes out and sees it tomorrow. We also have a movie out that's called Two Lovers and a Bear, and we also have Heaven's Floor. And that's a new market for us. So working with the Nunavut Film Development Corporation, it's we're seeing more and more people get into film. You want to talk about television and video?
Very briefly, television and video. There's a lot of people that are doing that. This is Kanukli, that they do a show on Inuit Broadcasting Corporation on a weekly basis, and it's targeted audience is the young people. They're quite funny. If you ever have a chance to watch them on YouTube, you should. They come out with all kinds of great ideas. Mock commercials that are quite funny. And there are other Inuktitut programs, and as you heard yesterday in one of the presenters, that we don't really have Inuktitut channel. We have APTN, which is Canada-wide, but we don't really have one just specifically for the Inuit audience, that Inuit language 24/7. So that's something that is being discussed by the Nunavut Film Board, and they've approached the government for their idea, and the government at this time is looking at to what it would mean for TV Nunavut. So that's still in a discussion stage. It's there's no decisions at this time, but it is being looked at. Inuit Broadcasting Corporation has been around for quite some time, and they come out with a very good programming. And theater, I'm sure Lakoluk explained a little bit about Kagyavut, and Kiviok Returns is out right now. They've asked elders about past stories, and they put it together. It's really quite interesting. With Kagyavut, they were the winners of the award that was given out a couple of years ago for some funds to get started, and now they're in the process of going out to foundations and what have you, and their goal is to create an art studio or an arts center sometime down the road, hopefully sooner than later in Nunavut. And contemporary Inuit art, we spoke a bit about that already. The one on the top left hand is something that was carved for the community of Panakto, I think. Yeah, it's in Panakto by a very renowned carver, Jaco Isulutak, and he took in a couple of young people to train them in art, and that was very successful, and it's quite an amazing display. Inspired Inuit designs. Let me see if I have anything on these slides. Just this is a visual of contemporary Inuit art. On the top right is a young lady showing off some beautiful fashions, including the shoes that my deputy minister is wearing some really nice sealskin shoes. And if my staff were here, she'd probably be wearing her heeled sealskin shoes. And those designs are made by her, Nicole Campog, my executive assistant.
And there's an example, again, of people who have a full-time job but do art on the side. And so she's very successful in with her sealskin shoes, but still remains a full-time employee.
Mm-hmm. And the carvings can come in any shape or sizes, and those little walrus have been around for quite some time. They're quite cute, and they're very popular. Comic making is quite interesting. There's a lot of ladies that are being brought back to make that more regularly. It was becoming kind of a dying art, but now with funding given to an organization, there are a lot of ladies on a very regular basis, young people being trained and educated on how to make the comics right from the beginning of fleshing the skins to creating the comics, and including the accessories like the duffel socks and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting.
Now we get to the interesting part. So what we'd like to do is change it up a bit. So instead of you having asking us questions, what we would really like to do is try to gather information from where you're from and see how some of these things impact your community. And so, with Nunavut, I mean, we're very small, only 37,000 people. With tourism and art, although we've been doing art for a long time, the actual marketing of art and those things, we're still very much at the early stages of trying to be successful at this. So we would love to get some feedback from the audience on how things work from where you're from. So the first one we're interested in is hearing how our neighbors are maximizing the economic impact of cultural industries in their region.
Here, but there was a wonderful previous session on regional development, role of culture and creative industry in regional development. And, just a previous session, double session actually, and several people from the University of Lapland were speaking, where they have a school in Arctic design, and it might be very interesting to make contact with those individuals, because I think that there was a lot of experience there that Nunavut could benefit from. Yeah. And even exchange programs. They have an Arctic Design Week, and it would be incredible for young Inuit from Nunavut to attend that week and be inspired by some of that activity. So.
I can talk a little bit about the fur production. Yeah, I think that's great. We'll definitely look into that. Our government provided funding for a course in Arctic College called the Fur Production Design. Unfortunately, we don't have a teacher right now, and there will be no classes in the fall. It has been around for over 5 years now, and every year there's been students learning how to do fur production, right from the fleshing of the skins to creating contemporary designs, and they've been quite successful. The late instructor was able to even go to Italy with the students to do their fur fashion design show, and her design actually was recognized in one of the very renowned magazines and was displayed all over the world, so that we're quite proud of her. They've been able to also go to NAFM, which is a huge international fur show in Montreal that's held every year. So they were doing quite well.
Thanks. Sorry. Maybe in the absence of that program, that course, the students could come down to Ottawa, to Montreal, to Washington, to the collections, the historic collections of Inuit clothing, and study those collections so that when the course begins again, they would have that foundation behind them. And I'd be happy to host people in Washington. So.
I met a wonderful lady called Anne-Laila Utsi, and she's the director of the Sami Film Institute. And she mentioned that they are trying to put together an Arctic film production fund. So I wondered whether that would be of interest.
Sorry. I'll let her speak in a minute. But she also approached us and gave us a really nice pamphlet, which we're going to be reading on the plane going home. And she gave us her business card as well. And she mentioned she's been working with the Nunavut film.
And we're always looking to collaborate. I mean, we're very small, so a lot of times it's really nice if we can work with others. We can always learn. We can always learn more. Anyone else?
They have questions.
I can make a comment as a consumer and a big fan of these things and someone who travels in the circumpolar area. In Alaska, they have a very interesting way of supporting and promoting across the board the things that people are making from the far isolated, more or less isolated communities to Anchorage. So they have what they call the Alaska Native Arts Foundation. And so what the foundation does, at least the last time I checked in, was they maintain a website that is actually the hub for selling things through the internet. So the individual makers in the communities don't have to worry about that. They actually ship their items to Anchorage, they photograph them, they put them online, they create a biography for them, and as they're sold through the foundation, then the money goes back, or perhaps they buy them up front. They also do travel to the communities, so to collect. This site is also very important because it becomes a way of explaining about the diversity of cultures in Alaska and the difference between the communities. So it's very seamless between the things that are being made, the histories, both shared and locally. And then the other thing that they do is in Anchorage, they have an exhibition space, and once a month they do an exhibition of an artist from somewhere in the region, and that's an excellent opportunity that I don't think many Inuit artists have, to have a one-person show or be part of a theme show for even a month is really something incredible to put on your CV, and it's a step up to grants and other funding sources. And also, I'll just mention in Greenland, I'm not sure that Kiviuk, the wool, is made there, but they seem to have a very established market for knitted items in Kiviuk. even whole sweaters and shawls, and I know that kiviok is also made in the Western Arctic, and it would be interesting to see rather than just or maybe or the Inuvialuit region as well too, I think. Uluhaktuk. And so, but I, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, I don't think there are many women who are actually making the items. They become very expensive because it's very expensive to harvest the materials to make the yarn. But in Greenland, they seem to be doing very well with that.
I'll take the hot mic. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm from Nunatsiavut, and one of the things that we've just started to do is, and I'm sure that you do them as well, but is to have professional development and capacity building workshops. So we just, leading up to an exhibition recently, we hired a Inuit photographer from each community to come and get training on how to take photographs of artworks. Sorry, the water went down the wrong pipe. And so in that process, we had people in the community who were helping us by taking pictures of artworks for a particular website project. But now those photographers all have, they all had their own cameras, but we provided them with a backdrop and with lighting so that now they all have a setup so that they can help other people. So in a situation like Christine's talking about where there's a website, then you wouldn't have to, then you could actually, you could help people have professional photos of their work, which is so important if you're going to sell it online. Especially, or send it out to competitions, etc. Now we have people in the communities who can take those photographs, but they also have been getting workshops in Photoshop and landscape photography. So it's actually building capacity in the communities. And so all of those 6 artists or 7 artists who participated in the workshop 2 years ago are now continuously working freelance as photographers, art photographers, but also professionally. And so I'm thinking about the stats that you had earlier about people who have full-time jobs or part-time employment, and then they supplement their work with the arts. And I'm just trying to think about opportunities like that where you could give people more training in a professional realm that also assists their art. So it's not like I do my job and then I make my art, but like I work in the arts and then I also make my own art production.
So the minister and I just last week were in Goose Bay, and it was fascinating. We had some great discussions there. We heard about your plantation in St. John's. Is that?
Plantation?
Yes.
Exhibition? Plantation. What do you mean?
It's some place for an artist. It's a place where artists rent space.
Oh, the plantation. Yeah, that is what it's called. I'm like, that's a weird name. No,
It is a
That's
weird
what I
name.
said. I said it's a weird name
It's a
too.
weird name. It
Yeah.
is. It's actually, it's a building that's like just a series of artist studios around,
Yeah.
like in a tourist-friendly area.
Yeah. And, just the thought of, we were talking to them about, could we send some artists down? Maybe you could send some artists up. I mean, we can all learn so much from each other. And yet we all, a lot of times, just sit at home and try to move things along when there's so many people we should all be talking to that's going to just make all our lives better.
Yeah, and just wrapping up, I guess, we just held this year for the first time an all-art summit for Nunavut Miut, and we brought down artists and had sessions and whatnot. So I'm hoping we'll continue to do that. It was a great experience for the artists. They shared quite a lot, and they also displayed their art in booths. And I'm not sure if they had a fashion show, but there was some products there available for sale as well. So that was quite exciting. It's a discussion towards a new strategy as well for the arts industry, because we're, as Sherri mentioned, we're starting to include other forms of art that people don't normally think about. Film, as an example, we don't really see it as a form of art, but it is. The other thing too is just for the Nunavut Miut people that are here, we have had the Nunavut Arts and Crafts Association around for quite some time now, and they do similar stuff. I mean, we can definitely do more, I know, but they do take photographs and they do bios for the artists and they display those on the websites. So that's available for our memberships. If you're not already part of that, you should consider trying to be part of it, because they do all kinds of things too. When there's artists exchanges, they have that as well available. So something to look into, but definitely we'll see how Alaska does it, and we can just always learn.
So if anyone wants to drop off their card to me, that would be great. I'd love to share some more thoughts with you all. Thank you, everyone.